The arena of the Zyrax Dominion was a place of noise, fire, and pride. It was built high above the city of Jakor, a metallic world shining with towers of light. Every cycle, thousands of alien citizens gathered here to watch battles. Tournaments meant to show strength and dominance. But on this day, something different had been promised. Something strange. For the first time, a human would fight in the great trial. Most of the crowd had never seen a human before. They had heard stories, weak, fragile, emotional creatures from a blue planet far from the core worlds. Their bones were soft, their bodies small, and their technology simple compared to the Dominion's advanced empire. To the Zyrax, humans were an amusing species, useful as traders or servants, but never warriors. Yet the Emperor had ordered the match, calling it a lesson in mercy. At the center of the arena stood Lieutenant Aaron Holt, a soldier from Earth's Defense Corps. His armor, once shining silver, was now dull and scarred from battle. His eyes were sharp but calm, scanning the massive crowd that filled the stands. He had fought many battles, but none like this. Around him, the air shimmered with heat. The ground beneath his boots was rough and red like rusted stone. Above, banners waved with alien symbols glowing in gold. The crowd's voices merged into one thunderous chant in their language, a chant that carried both excitement and mockery. To them, Holt was not a warrior. He was a curiosity, an insect in the path of giants. On the far end of the arena, the heavy gates opened with a metallic growl. A figure stepped through, the first challenger, a Zyrax champion named Kor Vethar. His armor was dark blue and shaped like jagged glass. 4 arms carried twin plasma blades that burned with orange light. He stood twice the height of a man, his scales reflecting every beam of light. The crowd cheered louder as he raised his weapons. Human. Kor's voice echoed through the speakers, deep and proud. Do not fear. I will make it quick. Holt's reply was calm. That's not necessary. The alien laughed, shaking the arena walls. You are brave, I'll give you that. But bravery without strength is nothing. The crowd shouted in agreement. They wanted to see a show, a one-sided fight that would end with the humans' defeat. They wanted to cheer for their champion and prove again that no species could stand against the Dominion. But Holt did not care for their opinions. He was not here to win applause. He was here to prove something to himself, to his people, and maybe to the stars that watched above. The signal horn sounded. The match began. Kor Vethar moved first, his blades slicing through the air with a hum that left trails of orange fire. He was fast, too fast for most species to even see clearly. But Holt moved just in time, rolling aside as the plasma cut through the ground where he had been standing. The crowd roared, half in awe, half in laughter. The alien swung again, this time from above. Holt lifted his broken shield, sparks bursting as the plasma met metal. The shield melted almost instantly, but it was enough to deflect the blow. Using the moment, Holt slammed his shoulder into Kor's side, knocking the larger creature off balance for a breath. The crowd gasped. A human had made contact. Kor hissed and swung one of his lower arms, striking Holt across the chest. The blow sent him sliding several meters back, his boots carving lines in the dirt. Pain burned through his body, but he didn't fall. He planted his feet and looked up again. Inside his helmet, Holt whispered to himself, "Stay calm. Use your training. Observe." The alien charged again, each step shaking the arena floor. Holt analyzed the rhythm, 3 steps, then a leap. He remembered the simulation drills, the alien physiology classes back at the academy, the weak spots behind the Zyrax armor plating. When Kor leaped forward again, Holt ducked low, rolled under, and slammed the hilt of his broken blade into the alien's knee joint. The armor cracked. Kor stumbled, roaring in anger. "You dare!" Holt didn't answer. He kept moving, circling like a wolf. The crowd's laughter had turned uncertain. They had expected a quick end. Instead, they were watching a fight, a real one. "Impressive," Kor growled, regaining his stance. "But it ends now." With a roar, the alien activated the energy core in his armor. Light flared and heat waves rippled through the air. Holt's visor warned of rising radiation, but he stayed focused. When Kor swung again, the plasma left a burning trail that nearly blinded him. Holt ducked, felt the heat graze his helmet, then leaped forward and kicked against the alien's leg again. This time, the weakened joint gave way slightly. Kor staggered just enough for Holt to drive his blade into the crack. The alien screamed. The crowd screamed too, but not in laughter this time. It was shock. Holt withdrew the blade and stepped back, breathing heavily. The wound was small but real. It was proof that even a human could hurt a warrior of the Dominion. Enough, Kor bellowed. I will crush you. He swung both plasma blades downward, crossing them into a bright X of light. Holt raised his arms, but he couldn't dodge fast enough. The energy slammed into him, throwing him across the arena. He hit the ground hard, his armor cracking. His vision blurred. He could taste blood. The crowd exploded in cheers once more, their confidence returning. End it! They shouted in their alien tongue. End the human! Kor lifted his weapons high, ready for the final strike. But Holt didn't surrender. Slowly, painfully, he got back to his knees. His left arm trembled and his chest burned, but he rose again. His voice was quiet, yet it carried through the speakers. You're strong, he said. But strength isn't everything. Kor frowned.
Still you speak?
You should know when to fall. Humans, Holt said, never know when to fall. Far above, in the Emperor's private viewing box, several high-ranking Zyrax officials watched with mild curiosity. Strange, one of them murmured. The human continues to fight despite clear defeat. The Emperor leaned forward, his golden eyes narrowing. That is what makes them dangerous, he said softly. They break when they should bend, but sometimes they rise again. Down below, Holt and Kor clashed once more. Each strike echoed through the metallic arena. Sparks flew, sand scattered, and the sound of steel and plasma filled the air. Kor's size and power dominated, but Holt's movements grew sharper with each exchange. His training as a soldier guided every motion, efficient, fast, relentless. At one point, Holt lost his weapon entirely. It flew from his hand and landed meters away. Kor laughed loudly, slamming his foot down to crush him, but Holt rolled aside, grabbed a chunk of broken armor from the ground and threw it straight into one of Kor's eyes. The alien roared in pain, clutching his face, giving Holt just enough time to recover his blade. The human's heart pounded, his breathing ragged, yet something deeper kept him going. A quiet voice in his mind that whispered of Earth, of oceans, of sunlight, of children laughing under blue skies. He remembered his home. He remembered why he fought. Not for glory, not for pride, but for hope. As the fight dragged on, the crowd's energy shifted again. Their cheers became murmurs. The spectacle was no longer funny. It was something else, something unfamiliar. Fear, respect? They weren't sure. Finally, Kor managed to strike Holt hard across the chest once more, knocking him flat. The human lay still for a moment, dust rising around him. His breathing slowed. The alien champion raised his weapons for the final blow. The crowd began to cheer again, louder this time, eager for victory. But deep inside the dust cloud, a faint blue light flickered under the human's armor. A heartbeat, a signal, a spark, and then silence. The crowd waited for the sound of death, but none came. The dust settled slowly. The alien froze, his eyes narrowing. The light beneath the human's armor was growing brighter. His fingers twitched, and that was when the noise of the arena began to fade. The cheers, the laughter, all died away as the human started to move. Slowly, calmly, but with purpose. Every eye turned toward him as he pushed himself up, standing once more in the center of the battlefield. The champion stepped back without realizing it, and somewhere above, even the Emperor leaned forward, whispering, "So the human awakens." The arena lights flickered as the crowd's voices fell into uneasy silence. No one spoke. No one dared to breathe too loudly. The human, Lieutenant Aaron Holt, was standing again. His armor was cracked and burned, one arm half-dented, but the glow beneath his chest plate pulsed brighter with each second. Dust and smoke curled around him like a shroud. The great Zyrax champion, Kor Vathar, who had moments ago been ready to deliver the final blow, now stepped back in confusion. "Impossible," the alien muttered, his voice trembling for the first time. The crowd began to whisper in their alien tongue. Words like machine, trick, and imposter filled the air. They could not believe what they were seeing. A human, small, fragile, and beaten, was refusing to fall. Aaron lifted his head slowly, his eyes glowing faintly behind the cracked visor. The internal systems of his combat armor hummed weakly, running on emergency power. The voice of his suit's AI, EVA-7, spoke softly in his ear. "Warning. Vital signs unstable. Armor integrity, 23%. Suggests surrender. He smiled faintly, even through the pain. Not yet, Eva. We still have one more dance left. Understood. The AI replied in its calm, robotic tone. Activating emergency combat protocol. A pulse of blue light surged through the armor, sealing some of the cracks and boosting strength for a short time. Aaron felt the energy flood his limbs, his pain fading just enough for him to move again. He raised his head and met Kor's eyes. Round 2, he said quietly. Kor roared in anger. You dare rise again? You should have stayed down, human. The alien charged, his forearms swinging with blinding speed. Sparks flew as his plasma blade struck the ground where Holt had stood a heartbeat before. The human rolled aside, leaving trails of dust, then jumped up and delivered a sharp punch to Kor's lower arm joint. The blow was not strong enough to break armor, but it was precise enough to make the alien wince. Aaron knew he couldn't overpower the champion. Kor's strength and endurance far exceeded any human limit. But he had something else: strategy. He analyzed every move, every stance, every small reaction the alien gave. Kor was confident, too confident, and that was his weakness. The alien swung again, this time wide. Holt ducked and used the opening to strike the wound he had made earlier on Kor's leg. The plasma blades missed him by inches. Sparks burst. The smell of burning metal filled the air. The crowd was torn between fear and amazement. The human was not just surviving, he was fighting back. High above, in the royal viewing chamber, the Zyrax Emperor watched in silence. Around him sat generals, nobles, and scientists. One of them spoke nervously. My Emperor, this human, he is not ordinary. The Emperor's golden eyes glowed softly. Indeed, he moves like one who has already accepted death yet fights as if he can change it. He turned to one of his aides. Gather everything we know about this man. I want to understand what drives such defiance. Down below, the fight continued with fierce rhythm. Kor unleashed a barrage of plasma strikes, each one powerful enough to melt steel. Holt moved carefully, dodging what he could, blocking what he couldn't. His left arm was hit once, burning the armor, but he gritted his teeth and pressed forward. Sweat ran down his face inside the helmet. The AI warned again. Energy reserves dropping, recommend retreat. He shook his head. No retreat. Kor lunged again, roaring, Enough games. This time, Holt didn't dodge. He stepped forward, into the attack, catching one of Kor's arms between his own and twisting with all his strength. The plasma blade slipped from the alien's hand and fell to the ground, sizzling as it hit the metal floor. For a second, Kor was stunned. No one had ever disarmed him before. Holt didn't waste the moment. He swung his knee into Kor's chest, then slammed his elbow into the side of the alien's helmet. The blow cracked part of the mask, exposing Kor's dark purple skin beneath. The arena gasped. The sound echoed through the halls like thunder. Kor stumbled backward, growling in fury. His pride was wounded deeper than his body. You will pay for that, he shouted, eyes blazing. He slammed his foot on the ground, sending a shockwave of energy across the arena. Holt was thrown back, crashing into a pillar. Pain spread through his ribs and his breathing grew sharp. He coughed, but his determination didn't waver. He stood again. Kor stared at him in disbelief. What are you? The alien demanded. You should be broken. Aaron's voice was calm. I'm human. The crowd had fallen silent again. For the first time in their long history of arena games, they were witnessing something that defied logic. The champion of their empire was struggling against a single wounded human, and that human refused to surrender. Somewhere in the audience, a young alien turned to his father. Why doesn't he stop? The child asked. He's hurt. The elder alien didn't have an answer. He just stared in silence. Back in the fight, both warriors circled each other carefully. Holt's vision blurred slightly. His armor systems blinked red, and warning signals flashed across his visor. His AI spoke again. Lieutenant Holt, your life readings are critical. Continuing will result in... He interrupted softly. I know, just keep me standing. Understood. He smiled faintly. Good girl. Kor, breathing heavily, pointed his remaining blade toward Holt. "You fight like a fool. You are finished." Aaron raised his damaged weapon. "Then finish me." With a roar, the alien charged. The ground trembled under his massive weight. Holt waited until the last possible second, then sidestepped and thrust his blade upward, driving it into Kor's shoulder joint. The alien screamed in pain, the plasma weapon falling from his grasp. Holt pulled his blade free and stepped back, both warriors now standing with nothing left but fists and fury. They collided again, trading blows. Metal clanged, armor cracked, blood spilled, but neither yielded. The crowd had forgotten to cheer. They were watching something else entirely, a battle not for glory but for meaning. Every punch Holt threw was weaker than the last, but each one carried the same message: humans don't quit. Finally, Kor managed to land a heavy strike on Holt's chest, sending him crashing to the ground once more. The human lay there, barely moving. His vision darkened. The blue light in his armor flickered weakly. The alien champion lifted his foot, ready to crush him for good. But before he could strike, a voice echoed from above. "Stop!" It was the Emperor. The arena froze. Kor lowered his foot, looking up in confusion. The Emperor's voice was calm but powerful. "This fight is over." Kor frowned. "But my Emperor," I said, "it is over." The Emperor's eyes moved toward the human. "The outcome has already been decided." Guards rushed forward, surrounding Holt as he struggled to sit up. His vision was blurry, his breathing shallow. Yet he saw the Emperor watching him with a strange expression. Not anger, but curiosity. "Bring him to me," the Emperor ordered. "Alive!" The crowd erupted in noise again. Questions, protests, confusion. No one understood why the Emperor would spare a defeated human. But his command was absolute. Kor growled in frustration, glaring down at Holt. "You're lucky," he said bitterly. "If it were up to me." Aaron looked up weakly and smiled. "It's not." The alien glared, then turned away. Two armored guards lifted Holt carefully, their grips firm but not cruel. The human didn't resist. His body was too weak and his mind was spinning with exhaustion. As they carried him through the gates beneath the arena, he heard the crowd again, shouting, arguing, calling his name with a mix of fear and awe. For the first time in Dominion history, the spectators weren't sure who had truly won. Hours later, deep inside the Emperor's citadel, Holt lay in a medical containment chamber. The walls around him shimmered with alien technology, glowing in gentle blue. His armor had been removed, and small robotic arms scanned his injuries. He was still alive, barely. Through the glass, the Emperor stood watching him silently. Next to him was a scientist holding a glowing tablet. "He should not have survived, Your Majesty," the scientist said softly. "No human body could endure such damage." The Emperor nodded slowly. "And yet, he stands." He turned away from the glass, his expression thoughtful. "Tell me everything about the humans, their wars, their history, their spirit." "Yes, Your Majesty," the scientist replied quickly. The Emperor looked back once more at the unconscious soldier. "I have seen species fight for pride, power, and greed," he murmured. "But this one fights for something else." He paused. "For hope." In the quiet of the chamber, Aaron Holt's eyes flickered open for a moment. He looked up at the strange ceiling, his vision hazy. Through the fog, he whispered to himself, "I'm still here." Then he closed his eyes again, the faint hum of alien machines surrounding him like a lullaby. The legend of the human who refused to fall had just begun to spread across the stars. The first thing Lieutenant Aaron Holt felt was silence, a deep, heavy silence that made him wonder if he had finally crossed the edge between life and death. But then he heard a soft humming, steady, mechanical, almost gentle. His eyes opened slowly, blinking against the dim blue light that surrounded him. He was lying inside a transparent capsule. Strange tubes were attached to his arms, glowing faintly with golden light. The air smelled clean but strange, like polished metal and cold wind. Beyond the glass, shadows moved, tall figures with glimmering armor and sharp faces. He wasn't on Earth anymore. He wasn't even in the arena. He was inside the citadel of the Xyrax Emperor. His body ached, but he forced himself to sit up slightly. A robotic arm extended from the ceiling, pressing a soft pad against his chest. A soothing warmth spread through him, dulling the pain. His combat suit was gone, replaced with a light silver uniform. "Welcome back, human," a calm voice said. Aaron turned his head. Standing beside the capsule was a tall alien with pale blue skin and golden eyes that shimmered like liquid fire. He wore robes of black and silver, and his presence radiated quiet authority. The human didn't need to ask who he was. The golden eyes gave it away. "The Emperor," Aaron said weakly. The alien inclined his head. "You know who I am. That saves time." His tone was calm, not cruel, not kind, just observing. "You fought with great determination. Few survive Kor Vethar's trial." "I didn't win," Aaron replied quietly. The Emperor studied him. "You stood up when no one believed you could. Sometimes that is a greater victory." For a long moment, neither spoke. The room hummed softly, filled with the quiet sounds of alien machines. Aaron watched the Emperor carefully. The alien leader didn't have the harshness he expected. His expression was thoughtful, even curious. Finally, the Emperor spoke again. "Do you understand why I stopped the battle?" Aaron shook his head slightly. "Because I wouldn't stay down?" "Partly." The Emperor turned to look through the glass wall where a holographic image of the arena floated, still glowing with traces of energy from the fight. "My people have grown proud. Perhaps too proud. They think power comes only from strength, from crushing others. But you, small, fragile, wounded, showed something else. You stood when you had every reason not to. That kind of spirit cannot be taught," Aaron smiled faintly. "It's human nature." The Emperor's golden eyes softened. "Then perhaps your nature is what my people have forgotten." Later that day, Holt was escorted from the medical chamber by 2 guards, not in chains, but as protection. They walked through long corridors made of shining crystal and silver metal. The architecture was both beautiful and cold, every line perfect, every light placed with purpose. It reminded him of a city built not for comfort, but for pride. At the end of the hall, a wide window opened to a view of space itself. The stars looked close enough to touch. Below, the planet Jakor shone like a jewel, wrapped in clouds and golden lights. "It's beautiful," Holt said quietly. One of the guards, a younger alien with green-tinted skin, turned slightly. "You think so? To us, it is just home." "Home always looks beautiful when you fought for it," Holt replied. The guard hesitated, then nodded slightly. "You fought well, human." It was a small sentence, but it carried weight. Respect, from a Xyrax soldier, was rare. When they reached the Emperor's council chamber, Holt found himself standing before a group of Xyrax officials, generals, and scientists. They stood in a half-circle, all eyes fixed on him. Their expressions ranged from interest to irritation. The Emperor sat on a raised seat in the center, his robe flowing around him like water. "Lieutenant Aaron Holt," he began, "you are far from your world, yet your courage has stirred my empire. There are those who wish to study you, others who wish to destroy you. I, however, wish to understand you." Aaron met his gaze calmly. "Understand what exactly?" "What makes you stand when you should fall," the Emperor said. "What gives your kind this impossible persistence?" The hall was silent. Holt thought carefully before answering. "It's simple. Humans don't like to quit. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's hope, maybe it's foolishness. But it's part of us. We keep going because if we stop, everything we love stops too." The room murmured softly. A few officials exchanged glances. The Emperor leaned forward. "Even when there is no chance of winning?" Aaron smiled faintly. "Especially then." For a long time, the Emperor said nothing. Then slowly a smile touched his lips. "Remarkable," he said quietly. "Perhaps that is what makes your kind so unpredictable." He stood, the movement commanding immediate silence from everyone present. "The Dominion has known only conquest. We have fought for centuries, believing fear makes us strong, but fear has made us hollow. Perhaps it is time we remember courage." He looked back at Holt. "And you, human, will help us do that." The council members began whispering in shock. One general stepped forward. "My Emperor, with all respect, this is dangerous. He is from a lesser world." "Enough," the Emperor interrupted, his tone sharp but calm. "Strength does not belong only to those who rule. Sometimes it is found in those who endure. He turned to Holt again. You will not be treated as a prisoner. You are an envoy now, from a world that still remembers what it means to fight for hope. Aaron blinked, surprised. Envoy, I didn't agree to. The Emperor raised a hand. You will have freedom within the Citadel. You may learn our ways. In time, perhaps we will send you home with a message. A message? Holt asked. The Emperor's golden eyes gleamed. That the stars remember humanity. That night, Aaron stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing alien city. The air was cool and filled with the hum of distant engines. Below, the streets shimmered with light as the Zyrak citizens moved about, unaware of the quiet conversation taking place above them. He rested his hands on the railing and closed his eyes. The fight replayed in his mind, the pain, the noise, the silence that came after. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a survivor. But deep down, something in him had changed. He had seen the faces of those who once called him weak, and in their eyes, he saw something new, respect. Maybe that was how peace began, not through power, but through understanding. Behind him, footsteps echoed softly. It was the young alien guard from earlier, carrying a small metallic device. The Emperor asked me to bring this to you, he said. Your armor. We repaired what we could. Aaron turned, taking the armor piece gently. The familiar weight brought memories rushing back. Thank you. The guard hesitated, then asked, Why do you fight, human? You could have surrendered. No one would have blamed you. Aaron looked out at the stars again. Because if one person stands, others might remember how to. The alien nodded slowly as if trying to understand a language he had never heard before. Then he left, leaving Holt alone with the stars. In another part of the Citadel, the Emperor stood before a grand window, his hands clasped behind his back. Beside him, one of his advisors spoke nervously. My Emperor, is it wise to keep the human alive? His presence may cause unrest. The Emperor didn't turn. Do you know why they feared him in the arena? He asked. Because he fought too fiercely? No, the Emperor said softly. Because he stood up after falling. My people have forgotten how to do that. He looked up at the vast sky beyond the glass. Perhaps the human was never the weak one. Days passed. Holt healed slowly, walking through the Citadel's gardens and observation decks. The aliens kept their distance, but they watched him with quiet curiosity. Children pointed, soldiers saluted, and some even greeted him respectfully. He had become a symbol, something between a mystery and a legend. Sometimes, when he was alone, Holt wondered if he would ever return to Earth. The stars seemed endless, and the thought of home felt both near and far. But he knew one thing for certain. Wherever he was, he carried Earth with him. In his heart, his will, and his fight, he was human. And that meant something. One evening, as the twin moons of Jakor rose above the horizon, Holt received a message from the Emperor. Tomorrow you will stand before the Dominion Council. They must see what I have seen. They must understand. Holt read the words carefully. He didn't know what awaited him, but he wasn't afraid. Because the crowd that once cheered for his defeat would soon learn the same truth the Emperor had seen in him, that humanity might fall 1,000 times, but it would always rise again. The next day, the arena was filled once more, though this time it was different. Word of the human survival had spread across the Dominion, not as a fighter but as something else, an unexpected force. The crowd still chattered, but this time their words carried caution and uncertainty. Lieutenant Aaron Holt was brought in at the center of the arena, not as a prisoner, but as a participant in demonstration. His armor, though repaired, was still dented and scorched. He stood upright, calm and ready. Above him, the Emperor observed from his private box, flanked by advisors and generals, their faces a mixture of curiosity and concern. The aliens had chosen 3 of their strongest champions to challenge him, not to kill, but to test. Each one towered over him, muscular and heavily armored, with weapons crackling with energy. The crowd erupted with cheers as the first champion approached, confident the human would finally fall. But Holt did not flinch. He didn't step back. His eyes scanned his opponents carefully, analyzing their movements with sharp precision. He knew he was smaller, weaker in raw power, but he had one advantage they had underestimated: his mind and his will. The signal horn blared, loud and metallic. The match began. The first champion charged with incredible speed, plasma blade swinging in an arc meant to sweep Holt off his feet. The crowd shouted in excitement, believing the human would be crushed in seconds. But Holt moved differently this time. He didn't dodge just to avoid pain. He moved to control space and timing, slipping between the champion's attacks, using the weight and momentum of the alien to make him stumble. The human landed a precise strike on a weak joint in the alien's armor. Sparks flew and the champion roared in surprise. The crowd fell silent. It was not a decisive blow, but it was proof that humans could adapt, even against the strongest warriors. The champion recovered quickly, swinging again with unmatched speed. Holt ducked, rolled, and countered, pushing the alien back. He didn't hit to injure. He hit to outsmart, to create openings. The crowd gasped, some beginning to murmur disbelief. One of the judges whispered to another, "I have seen warriors fall in seconds, yet this human survives each strike." The second champion approached. This one was taller, his body almost double Holt's size. His forearms carried spiked energy rods that hummed with dangerous power. The crowd cheered even louder, certain the human could not survive this assault. But Holt's eyes never left the opponent. He studied every stance, every twitch, every shift of weight. When the alien struck, Holt moved precisely, letting the attacks glance past him. At the perfect moment, he leaped onto a small platform, using it as leverage to push the alien off balance. The alien stumbled, its rods clashing on the platform, sparks flying. Holt landed gracefully and then ran along the arena floor, dodging the next strike. Each move was careful, calculated, as if he were riding a rhythm the crowd had never seen before. The spectators began to whisper again. Some of the younger aliens cheered. Others sat in silence, unsure if they were witnessing strength, magic, or something beyond comprehension. Holt's chest burned and sweat ran down his face inside the helmet. He was tired, but his mind was sharper than ever. Every moment, every breath counted. The third champion was the largest yet. Covered in black crystalline armor, with a weapon the size of a small shuttle, it glowed with deadly energy. The crowd held its breath as he approached slowly, confident that the human could not possibly stand against him. Holt tightened his grip on the small, repaired blade he had kept from the previous day. He didn't shout, he didn't roar, he waited. When the giant swung his massive weapon, Holt rolled under, feeling the wind and heat rush past him. With a calculated kick, he sent the alien stumbling into the arena wall. The sound of cracking metal echoed. The crowd went silent, a low murmur spreading through the stands. "How?" whispered one. "It's impossible." But Holt didn't pause. He moved again, keeping the distance small but safe, forcing the champion to swing without hitting. Each movement was precise, each step measured. He was not just fighting. He was teaching, showing, demonstrating human resilience. The three champions attacked together now, their strikes lightning fast, coordinated, terrifying. Holt danced between them, slipping through openings, using their combined power against them. He dodged one strike, pushed off another, and let the third stumble into his own momentum. Sparks and energy flashed across the arena like lightning storms. For the first time, the aliens in the stands stopped cheering entirely. Their confidence vanished. The human, small, exhausted, wounded, was moving faster, sharper, smarter than any of them. One of the high-ranking generals in the Emperor's box whispered urgently, "It cannot be. How does he move like that?" The Emperor's golden eyes gleamed. "This is what I saw yesterday. Not brute strength, but willpower. Not armor, but determination. Humans do not break easily." Meanwhile, Holt saw an opening, a momentary mistake in the champion's coordination. With perfect timing, he darted forward, striking the largest champion's leg joint. Sparks flew as the armor cracked slightly. The alien roared, stumbling backward. Holt didn't press the attack recklessly. He stepped back, circling, ready to respond. The crowd was frozen in disbelief. The aliens who had mocked and laughed just yesterday now sat silent, stunned, and uneasy. For the first time, they realized that human courage was not to be underestimated. Vethar, watching from the sidelines, clenched his fists. Even he had thought he had seen the last of the human. Yet here he was again, moving, adapting, alive. He whispered to himself, "What is this creature?" Holt paused for a moment, catching his breath. He looked around the arena and saw the faces of thousands, some fearful, some amazed. He did not feel pride or anger. He felt something deeper, a sense of purpose. This is why I fight. Not for glory, not for fear, but to remind them what humans can be. He turned toward the three champions. They were coordinated, precise, and dangerous, but predictable when studied carefully. Holt attacked with strategy, using timing, angles, and speed. Every movement drew gasps from the audience. The champions were strong, but Holt's determination made him stronger than they expected. Minutes passed. The champions were now exhausted, panting under their heavy armor. Holt's body ached, but his mind was focused. He made small, precise strikes, never reckless, always measured. One by one, the champions faltered, not because Holt had brute strength, but because they could not predict a mind so determined and unyielding. The largest champion stumbled, his energy rod sparking as he fell to one knee. The second followed, tripping over his own momentum. The first Corvethor watched helplessly, unable to stop the human who had survived his own trial yesterday. Holt stood in the center of the arena, his chest heaving, his blade trembling slightly in his hand. Dust and sparks filled the air. The crowd was dead silent. The cheers that had roared before had completely died. For the first time, the aliens weren't cheering, laughing, or mocking. They were watching something they could not fully comprehend, a human who refused to fall. Even the youngest spectators were quiet, realizing that this creature, the one they had called fragile, weak, and insignificant, had achieved the impossible. Holt lowered his blade slightly, breathing heavily, but his eyes never left the Emperor's box. The golden gaze met his own, calm but acknowledging. It was the look of understanding. Somewhere deep inside the crowd, whispers began to spread. He is not ordinary. He is fearless. He will not break. The Emperor finally stood, raising a hand. Enough, he said, and the arena fell completely silent. Let it be known, this human has shown the Dominion a power beyond brute strength. He has shown the courage to rise when all expected him to fall. That is the spirit we have forgotten. Holt lowered his blade fully, his breathing ragged but steady. He had survived. He had stood again, and in doing so, he had changed the way the Dominion saw humanity. Corvethor approached slowly, his expression unreadable. He stopped before Holt and bowed his massive head slightly, a gesture of respect rare among the Zyrax. You are unlike any I have known, he said quietly. Holt nodded faintly. Neither are you. The arena emptied slowly, the crowd still whispering in shock and awe. The message had been clear. Humans are resilient, clever, and unstoppable when they refuse to break. As Holt was escorted back to the Emperor's citadel, he felt the weight of what had just happened. Not pride, not victory, but a quiet sense of purpose. Humanity had survived its first true test among the stars, and had done so without surrendering. For the first time, the stars seemed a little closer, and the universe a little more open. And somewhere above, in his private chamber, the Emperor whispered, "The human will teach us more than we ever expected." The arena was quieter than it had ever been before. Word of Lieutenant Aaron Holt's survival and skill had spread across the Zyrax Dominion like wildfire, not as a curiosity, not as a mere fighter, but as a symbol of human resilience. Today, the Emperor had summoned him for the final demonstration, a test not of brute strength, but of courage, strategy, and the will to inspire. Holt stood at the center of the arena, repaired armor fitted but showing the marks of every battle he had endured. His chest heaved, sweat dripping from his brow, yet his stance was firm. He had learned the rhythm of the Dominion warriors, studied their techniques, and prepared for what no one expected, to survive and teach at the same time. Above him, the Emperor's box glimmered in gold light. Around the arena, tens of thousands of spectators waited, not with the expectation of cheering, but with silent curiosity, awe, and a faint tremor of fear. Even seasoned champions watched closely, wondering if this human could truly defy everything they believed about strength. Holt did not speak. He did not need to. His presence was enough. 3 champions stepped forward, taller and stronger than any human should ever face. Each one carried weapons humming with lethal energy. The crowd erupted briefly, but Holt's calm gaze silenced them. The first champion, Corvethor, now wary after the previous encounters, advanced slowly. His forearms shifted, ready for any move. Holt observed, weighing every possibility, calculating not with speed alone, but with experience, instinct, and courage. The horn sounded. The final demonstration began. Cor lunged, his movements precise and fast, but Holt moved differently this time. He did not dodge blindly. He anticipated, guiding the champion's momentum. The human struck not to destroy but to redirect, using the alien's power against him. A leg joint twisted slightly and Core stumbled. The crowd murmured, some alien spectators covering their mouths in disbelief. The human was not only alive, he was controlling the fight. The second champion charged, a towering figure with glowing crystal armor. Holt sidestepped, using the edge of the platform as leverage to push off, landing a sharp strike at a weak spot in the alien's armor. Sparks flew. The alien roared, staggered, and Holt ducked beneath the following attack, sliding gracefully to the side. Every move was deliberate. Every strike was calculated. This was not brute force. This was strategy, courage, and human ingenuity combined. The largest champion approached last. His black crystalline armor reflected the light, making him appear almost like a moving mountain. The crowd held its collective breath. They had expected the human to fall long before reaching this moment. Holt raised his damaged blade, his movements measured. The giant swung his massive weapon, but Holt did not retreat. Instead, he timed the strikes carefully, letting the momentum work against the larger opponent. He ducked low, rolled forward, and delivered a strike to a weak joint. The giant stumbled, crashing into the arena wall. Silence fell over the crowd. Even seasoned warriors were speechless. The human was standing unbroken in the center of the arena, surrounded by the strongest of the Dominion. From the Emperor's box, the golden-eyed ruler watched with a quiet smile. "See, my generals," he whispered. "This is not weakness. This is courage. This is humanity." Holt's chest heaved as he kept his gaze steady. He was tired. Every muscle in his body screamed, but he stood firm. For him, this fight was never about glory. It was about proving that humans refuse to surrender no matter the odds. The three champions now paused, their heavy breaths visible through their helmets. They had never faced such an opponent, not in skill, not in determination, and certainly not in unyielding spirit. Kor Vethar spoke, voice low but respectful. You are not like any human I have known. You should have fallen. You should have broken. And yet, Holt didn't respond with words. His calm presence said it all. He had stood when all expected him to fail. He had moved when all assumed he would remain still. The Emperor raised his hand. "Enough," he declared. "Let the record show that the human who stands before you is no ordinary being. He embodies courage, persistence, and the power of the will. Today the Dominion learns a lesson it has long forgotten. Strength is not always measured by size or weapons, but by heart and determination." The arena erupted, not with fear, not with anger, but with a mixture of awe and respect. The crowd that had laughed, mocked, and cheered for violence now sat in silent admiration. Even the champions, tall and fierce, bowed slightly. A gesture of respect rare among the Zyrax. Holt lowered his blade fully, breathing heavily but steadily. The exhaustion, the pain, the countless blows, it did not matter. He had stood. He had proven the impossible. Later, in the quiet of the Emperor's chambers, Holt was offered water, nourishment, and a chance to rest. The Emperor himself approached, walking slowly, his golden eyes bright with curiosity. "You have done something my empire has never seen," the Emperor said softly. "Your people, your world, they are different than we imagined." Holt smiled faintly. "We may be small, we may seem fragile, but we survive. We adapt, we rise again. That's what humans do." The Emperor nodded. "And because of that, perhaps the stars will never be the same." Days passed. Holt trained with the Dominion soldiers not to fight them, but to teach them. They learned new strategies, techniques, and ways to see courage not as blind aggression, but as strength guided by purpose. Humans' methods, small, calculated, yet unyielding, changed the perspective of the Dominion forever. Even children, soldiers, and nobles began to speak of the human who refused to fall. Statues were planned. Stories were written. Tales of courage spread across planets. A species that had once looked down upon humans now respected them. Holt himself did not boast. He did not demand admiration. He simply continued to stand tall, showing through actions and presence that being human meant standing up no matter how many times you fell. One evening, Holt stood on a balcony overlooking the vast city of Jakor. The twin moons glimmered above, and below the city shimmered like a jewel. He thought of Earth, of the oceans, of blue skies, and of people who never gave up even when the odds were impossible. He whispered to himself, This is what we fight for. Not power, not glory, but hope. A shadow moved behind him. The Emperor approached silently, standing beside the human to look at the glowing city. You have taught us more than I expected, the Emperor said. Not with weapons, not with force, but with spirit. Your courage has changed my empire. Holt nodded. Then maybe it will change more than one empire. The Emperor smiled faintly. Perhaps humanity's story is only beginning. And perhaps one day the stars will see you rise again. Word of Holt's courage spread far beyond Jakor. Across the Dominion, humans were no longer considered fragile, weak, or insignificant. Ships carried their stories. Scholars studied them. Children played games pretending to be humans who stood against impossible odds. And on Earth, far away, no one knew yet that one human had changed the galaxy. Not with power, not with weapons, but with courage, determination, and the refusal to ever stay down. Holt looked up at the night sky, feeling the faint pull of home. But for now, he had a role to play. He had a duty not only to humans, but to the lessons they carried into the universe. He had survived the impossible. He had stood when all expected him to fall, and the stars had taken notice. The human who would not break had become a symbol for every species. The champions who had once mocked him now spoke his name with respect. The crowds who had cheered for his defeat now whispered with awe, and across the Dominion one lesson was clear: humans rise, no matter how heavy the fall, no matter how impossible the odds. Holt smiled faintly, standing tall against the light of the twin moons, and somewhere deep in the cosmos, the universe seemed a little brighter because of it.